with that, thank you very much for coming from the bottom of my heart. I'd like to pass it off to the New Hampshire DES, and we'll get it going for you guys. All right, thank you very much.
So good evening, everybody. Thanks for coming out. It's great to see so many faces here. Some old faces I hadn't seen in a long time, so it's nice. My name is Mike Wimsatt. I serve as Director of the Waste Management Division for Sure, I'm sorry. Yep, I'd be happy to do that. So, good evening. My name is Mike Wimsatt.
Could you spell your name, please? Anyone, the acoustics in this room are not great. So this may help, but actually the speaker's facing you.
Oh,
Okay. Oh, that's a little better.
okay. Does that work all right?
Yeah, that's better.
Okay. Good evening. My name is Mike Wimsatt. I serve as Director of the Waste Management Division for New Hampshire DES. And the City of Berlin folks asked us to come out and participate in this public meeting tonight. And our role in this really is to tell you a little bit about what we know about Dummer Yard. It's a facility that we've had a regulatory role with for many, many years, for decades. And kind of give you some context for what we know about the current conditions, a little bit of the history of the site, and the current conditions out there, and the conditions that we have some concerns about. And then we're going to be passing it off to folks associated with Live Free or Die LLC who proposed and talked about possibly siting and constructing a landfill here for soil disposal. I want to emphasize we do not have a permit application from these folks, so this is just a conceptual project at this point for us that's been described to us by the folks that you're going to hear from tonight. They're doing their due diligence, trying to figure out if this is a project that they want to move forward with and what it would mean to do so. So we're not going to be able to answer any questions about the specifics of it because we don't have a permit application before us. But they can certainly answer your questions about what they are looking to do and what they plan to do. But in order to get started, I want to, yes?
I was just curious though, are you going to discuss anything with Revive and NEPS and PFAS-busting in the
No, I'm not.
Franklin area?
I don't have any plans to talk about that. So what I'd like to do, just to kind of make sure that we have a productive and efficient evening tonight, I'm going to introduce our staff from DES who are going to be presenting. They got a presentation that's probably going to last about 15 minutes or so. And then that will turn it over to the folks who are proposing the project. I think it probably would work best if we hold off questions because there's going to be a lot that they're going to be presenting that we're going to present. And then to the extent you have questions or want to make comments or what have you, we'll be happy to entertain those. So with that, I want to introduce the DES team that's here tonight. Mary Down is a permit engineer in our Solid Waste Management Bureau. And she's going to start off and talk a little bit about the history of the facility and the conditions that we know that are out there. And then also joining us is Jamie O'Rourke, who's a hydrogeologist in our remediation bureau who works on solid waste sites. And he's going to talk a little bit about what we know about the soil and groundwater conditions out there. And then once Jamie's done, we'll turn it over to these folks to talk about the project, and then we'll look forward to hearing your questions. So with that, I want to introduce Mary and let her get started with her presentation.
I'll throw it for you. Oh, perfect. Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name's Mary Down. I'm a permit engineer with the Solid Waste Management Bureau at the NHDES. So I'm just here. I'd like to give a little bit of background, specifically with the history of the Dummer Yard Landfill with the DES and their solid waste permits. So right here on the screen, we have like a plan view of the landfill. And basically, it's about, this area here is about 105 acres. You probably are all familiar with the location. It's right off Hutchins Street. On the north side, it's bordered by Success Pond Road. And this landfill is kind of divided up into 10 smaller areas. Area 1 through 4 were taken back in the early from 1900s sometime. They started taking in waste from the paper manufacturing industry from about 1900, early 1900s to about 1997, where they stopped taking waste. In and you can see basically the areas are like 1 through 4 are divided up by waste type and by permit, really. You can switch it to the next. And this is kind of like a timeline in the history. Early 1900s sometime they started taking waste. Area 2A, which was permitted by the Department of Health prior to DES being formed in 1980. And then it was permitted with a 5-foot sludge liner. Now, the liner system is basically just a barrier. It's used to prevent leachate from seeping into the soil and groundwater beneath the landfill. So when I talk about liner, that's what I mean. Leachate is, and I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with leachate. It's basically storm water that percolates into the soil and groundwater beneath the landfill and can potentially contaminate groundwater. In a cap system, when it's closed, they put a cap, there's a protective cap used to prevent water infiltration into the landfill and creating leachate. So 1980, the first Area 2A was permitted. 1986, that area was expanded into 2B, and that was permitted in 1986, again by the Public Health Department. And then that permit was issued to the James River Corporation, and in 1986, the first groundwater permit was issued. No, hold on, I'll go through it. No, sorry, go back. I'll go through the whole timeline. Go back, I'm sorry. Then Area 5, which was basically for bark reclamation, that was permitted briefly in 1990. It was permitted for general debris, but it was never built and it was never operated, so that permit expired. The permit that was issued in 1986 was kind of continued by a temporary permit that was issued in 1992, mostly for closing the landfill. At this point, they were interested in closing all the areas. So that temporary permit is a DES permit, and it was issued to James River Corporation. And then the closure areas for 3 and 4 were permitted in 1995, and then the areas for 1, 2A, and 2B were permitted in 1996. And also the permit was transferred in 96 to Crown Paper Company. So in 97 they ceased receiving waste. 1999 the permit was transferred again to Pulp and Paper, which then they went out of business. They declared bankruptcy. The property was abandoned in 2001, and the oversight of the property of the bond actually that was in place, the surety bond for closure, post-closure activities, was taken over by a bond managing company. And I think currently the bond managing company is Travelers of Hartford. And they were responsible for post-closure care. So post-closure care, they continued that until 2018, and they pretty much ran out of money in the bond. So since 2018, post-closure care ceased, and the reporting ceased on that as well. Just a note, there were a couple reports that were completed this past year, 2024. A summary report by Sanborn Head, and then Phase 1 environmental site assessment by GZA. Yep, thanks. So Dummer Yard Landfill was closed. Areas 1 through 4 were closed and capped, and it's called an extended interim cap. So those were closed by 1997. The extended interim cap included glacial till, and it's pretty much a substandard capping system. It's kind of just what kind of like to note that, you know, the original 1986 permit required a capping system to be the clay or synthetic cap, which is less permeable, but in 96, through that temporary permit modification, they were allowed to use the interim cap, but with terms and conditions, they needed to evaluate the performance and such, but not much was done after it was closed, because basically it went bankrupt, and they weren't really taking, until 2018, they were doing some post-closure maintenance, but then they ran out of money. So in post-closure, I did want to point out, there's a lime leachate pond that drains to the sewer system right now, so that also needs to be maintained in post-closure. And there are some problems. It does need significant repair for that area as well. And just one note, with regard to areas 5 through 9 is the bark reclamation area. That most of the bark was reclaimed, and so capping was just a matter of covering the soils and seeded for vegetation growth. So now they're in post-closure. They have to do post-closure for a closed landfill until they meet performance standards. Now, performance standards, they basically consist, in our rules, they are basically, you have to cease, they'll cease generation, the landfill will cease generating leachate, cease generating landfill gas, achieve maximum settlement, and there should be no adverse impacts to groundwater or surface water, and no other risks to human health or the environment. Performance standards are difficult to reach, so post-closure kind of goes on indefinitely until those standards are met. So right now, post-closure care, the facility is required to regularly inspect, monitor, and maintain the facility in accordance with the solid waste rules. So right now, I'm going to turn it over to Jamie O'Rourke from the groundwater permitting section.
Thank you, Mary. Can everybody hear me okay? I want to make sure I'm loud enough here. Okay. So the groundwater monitoring permit. So groundwater monitoring essentially started out here at this location in the early 1980s, perhaps as early as 1980. That goes back pretty far into our records. The first groundwater management permit was issued in 1986. The current permit, the last permit that was issued out there was the 8th iteration. Groundwater permits get renewed every 5 years or so. That permit was issued in 2016 and was due for renewal in 2021. I'll circle back to that in a second. Groundwater permits outline the number of locations that are to be monitored around the landfill and what they're supposed to be monitored for. At this location, there are 9 monitoring wells and 3 surface water locations that are sampled and monitored for over time. And you can see a list of all the various compounds that are managed or monitored for. The term that we end up using is landfill leachate indicator parameters. These are the kinds of things that you might find in landfill leachate. So we have folks monitor the groundwater for those. That can include things like chloride, nitrate, metals, such as iron and manganese and arsenic. Things we do also find in nature to some extent. Also volatile organic compounds like petroleum products, benzene, toluene, and solvents such as PCE and TCE. There's about 65 compounds in that VOC list that get monitored for. And then also there's field parameters like pH and specific conductivity, temperature, and so forth. It gives a base foundation for what's going on out there. Now, one of the last things that was done out at the site was sampling in 2018. This was for PFAS, or per and polyfluoroalkyl substances. I'll circle back to that in a second. So this is a figure of the site. It's very similar to the one Mary showed before. If you can, you may see that there are different colored circles on there. Each of those circles signify one of the monitoring locations. The red ones are for monitoring wells, and the blue ones are the surface monitoring locations that I discussed under the permit on the previous slide. You'll see that if you count them up, the red dots won't actually match up with the number of monitoring wells that are listed on the permit. That's because a couple of the locations have 2 wells at depth. One sampling and monitoring at a shallow depth, and another one sampling and monitoring at a deeper depth. You get a good concept of what's going on out there. Not sure how well you can see it, but there are some blue vertical lines crossing up and down across that figure. Those are the groundwater contour elevations. And when you stack them all up together, it gives you a map, almost like a topographic map if you were thinking about, you know, a USGS map or something along those lines. That tells us the groundwater flow direction. The flow direction is not surprisingly to the west, down the hill, if you will. Actually, here, go back, please. So, as I said, there has been groundwater data out there for an extensive period of time, and since closure in the late 90s. The impacts that we see in the groundwater, have seen in the groundwater out there, are somewhat typical of what we see at unlined landfills. Iron, manganese, very common obviously in New Hampshire. A lot of us have wells that might have that in there. Interestingly enough, not a lot of volatile organic compound impacts, and that might be because of the kind of waste that was put into there. So your VOCs, like your benzenes and your toluenes, haven't really been detected very frequently, if at all, over time. Now I mentioned PFAS. And PFAS was sampled at 3 locations in 2018. One of those locations was upgrading, kind of one of those high-level, off-to-the-right dots, and then 2 others were downgrading, or downhill, of the waste. Now, there were detections of PFAS over standard, not also uncommon for our online landfill. One thing I will make a comment to, though, is in the area there are no drinking water supply wells. So the risk is minimal to folks who may be living in the area because they're off public water. Doesn't make it okay, but it needs to be monitored. Now, I mentioned previously that the permit was due for renewal, and when that permit does get renewed, whenever that does end up happening, PFAS will end up having to be part of that monitoring program. There. So the current status, this speaks to both Mary's program and my own. The surety bond, as Mary mentioned before, is lacking funds. It's all been spent out. It's pretty much bankrupt. These next few things are all things that we see as outstanding issues. The leachate management system requires improvements. Need to address possible leachate seeps. So that's where the capping is performing the way it needs to keep the water inside of the landfill. Also, the capping system itself requires some regrading and repairs due to differential settlement. The kind of waste that's in this landfill settles very unevenly. And in doing so, it's created some ponding. And you don't want water sitting on top of the landfill, you want water coming off of the landfill. So in general, the capping system, the security system, so gates and fencing and so on and so forth, the leachate system, stormwater system, landfill gas fence, groundwater monitoring wells, they all, to some extent, require repair and maintenance over time and will require future monitoring. And as I mentioned, the groundwater permit renewal is also due for an update, and that is needed. So if you're interested to do a little bit of a deeper dive, or you want to look at some of the records that Mary and I have been talking about, DES is One Stop, which is a database online. It's a repository of many of the records we've been talking about. It goes back a long ways. There might be some stuff back from the 1980s that might be on paper somewhere, but we can get that for you. The best place to start, though, is the One Stop record. And if you take a quick look at that, you'll see that there's a link and a page and some directions on how to get through there. Through the process. It's very helpful. You just want to make sure that when you're looking, you use the ID numbers that are listed for Mary's program, the solid waste program, and the groundwater monitoring related stuff as well. And here's our contact information. If you have questions or you want to help get a walk through the one-stop system, more than happy to help out. Mary and myself on the left, and Director Wimsatt's information is there on the right. So, thank you very much. You're going to hand it off, right? Yeah, that's probably best.
Hello, it's great to see so many people at a meeting like this. One of the things we want to do is get some input on how the project is received and how we can do things that are acceptable to the city. So my name is Eric Steinhauser. I'm with a firm called Sanborn and Associates, and we're the lead designer on this project. And you can go to the next slide. And so I have a bunch of things I want to talk about. Hope I don't bore you, but I'm going to tell you who the development team is, where the project is, why the project, what's it going to entail, what are our objectives and goals, and a little bit about the components of it. I will say that we are very, very early in design. So everything is pretty conceptual. We want to be collecting information so that we can get to a really good place in the project. Next slide, please. So who's the development team? So the developer is LFOD Northwoods LLC. They're made up of two firms, WL French and North-South Construction. WL French is a 50-year-old earthwork contracting firm. They run facilities very similar to what I'm going to be talking about in Massachusetts. Massachusetts has a different type of program that allows for these type of projects. North-South Construction is a land development firm here in New Hampshire, and they've been around for almost 2 decades as well. Sanborn Head, we're a 30-year-old New Hampshire-based geoenvironmental consulting firm. We specialize in site remediation projects and solid waste projects. I've been doing this kind of stuff for about 40 years, and look forward to continuing that with this project. We will be supported by other firms. There's a lot of other work and data that we don't specialize in, so we'll be hiring other firms to help us on various other tasks. Next slide. So where's the project? The land that we're talking about being purchased is in green. That's the Dummer Yard property. It's about 400 acres. It's hard to see, but in the bottom on Hutchinson Road, there's 2 other parcels in orange that would be part of the purchase and sale. And on this slide, we wanted to look at the GIS and see what kind of properties are there, what other kind of easements are on site. So again, we're in data collection and understanding what impacts this project would have, not only on abutting neighborhoods, but on facilities. Like there's a snowmobile ATV trail that runs through here. There's other easements for Mount Carberry landfill and for utility corridors. So all these things have to come into factor into our project. Next slide, please. So what is the project? It's really 2 projects. So we're going to address the items that were talked about by Mary and Jamie on the existing landfill, which you can show here. So the items that Jamie was talking about and Mary were talking about, that's part of the project, is to do that remediation. And I'm going to go into that in a little bit more detail about our plans for that. And the second part is to develop a soil disposal facility, which would be regulated as a landfill, because that's how it has to happen in New Hampshire, in that general area. So up gradient of the existing landfill area, but it would be a separate facility, a separate permit from the other permits that are there now. So what is the project? Mary and Jamie did a much better job than I'm going to do because they live in this more than I am right now. But we have an environmental liability at that site for the reasons they talked about. There's leachate seeps, the landfill cap is substandard, the leachate management system is not working, and the funding that would otherwise help manage that is gone. So there is a real problem here. Past projects that have been proposed to the city to be at this facility, I believe there was a solar project and some others. None of those projects were going to deal with the environmental problem on site. This project will. So very different in concept. We're going to do something to help something else. So 2 projects. Project number 1, and these projects will happen simultaneously. It's not like one happens and then the other, like one will happen and the other one won't. These have to happen simultaneously. So we're going to deal with the remediation first as a first project. So just real high level, we need to, like Mary and Jamie said, we have to fix the caps. We have to regrade them so we can drain water the right way. So it's coming off the landfill and away from actually the project we want to do. We want to separate these 2 facilities and repair the cap so that it stops liquid from getting into it. So rainwater that's seeping through the substandard cap is generating leachate, the liquid that flows through the waste. We want to cut that off. We want to put that umbrella on top, make it a nice tight umbrella. And then eventually that leachate that's within the landfill that will naturally drain out will go down to de minimis levels. No, not yet. We want to better control stormwater so that it's managed correctly. We don't cause erosion or downstream issues when we start regrading things. And we need to reestablish a groundwater monitoring program that makes sense. So there's a lot of work that needs to happen to make this stuff work. But the end result is an environmentally stable site. Second project is a soil disposal facility. So I want to tell you what it's not before I tell you what it is. It is not a municipal solid waste landfill. We're not taking trash. The stuff that comes out of your house, out of your businesses, will not go here, right? We're not going to have bag trash going into this this facility. So I hesitate to call it a landfill, be regulated as a landfill, but it's really a soil disposal facility. So next slide. Because it's contaminated soil that would go in there, it's going to be managed as a solid waste under DES rules and under city guidelines. So there's a lot of work that has to go into the permitting and designing of that facility, just like it would be for another municipal waste facility, but we're taking a different kind of material. And the revenues generated from accepting that material will pay for project number 1. And again, only soil and soil-like facilities. So I had the picture of the landfill that we're not going to do. That's what it's going to look like. It's going to be soil disposed of in a big pile. Next. So just a couple of pictures of an actual soil disposal facility that WL French runs in, I'm not going to pronounce this correctly. Winchendon, Massachusetts. So this is an actual site. This is the kind of material. So when there's a big earthwork development project, if the soil is contaminated, it can't be used as clean fill. It needs to go to a disposal area. And that's what's happening here and what we're going to propose. So we have, it just looks like an earthwork project that you might have in town. Next, please. So part of the permitting process is going to be, we have to tell DES what we are going to accept as well as what we're not. So no trash, but we are going to accept non-hazardous contaminated soil and soil-like materials. They might have asbestos in it, might be incinerator ash. All these other items are be a lower quality. Okay. I'll take the questions at the end if that's okay. So the major thing is going to be the contaminated soil, and these other materials are what we're right now proposing to accept in this facility as well. Next slide. I'm sorry, can you go back one? So anything that comes to the site that's considered contaminated soil needs to be tested before it leaves the site where it's being generated, so we understand what's coming in here, because if it doesn't meet the criteria that WO French and North-South want to accept, it won't come to this facility. So there's a testing protocol that happens before material comes on site. So our objectives and goals. We want to communicate with the public and the other stakeholders. So one of the reasons for this meeting is to get comments, and we'll take them at the end of the presentation. So we want to hear from the city. We want to talk with the folks that have the trails in that area, so we make sure that we're understanding what their needs are so we can plan around that. And we need to work with DES so that we address the concerns they're going to have for both the remediation project, making sure we're hitting all the topics they want, as well as the design of the other facility. There's a number of approvals that we have to go through, not just with the city, but various bureaus and divisions of the DES. This is a large project, so all the different divisions in DES, I shouldn't say all, most of them are going to be involved in this project in one form or another. Next, please. So an overview of the site here. So the yellowish or orangish are the existing landfills. There's some blue arrows on there, might be hard to see, but the concept is to get the water controlled and away from being upstream. We don't want any water going underneath the landfill, so we're going to get the water off the cap into controlled stormwater basins. The pinkish purple area is the area that we think we can site the soil disposal facility, and that was selected based on a number of siting criteria that's in the New Hampshire rules. So there's a whole section of the landfill rules that say where a landfill can go on a horizontal basis, so setbacks, property lines, residences, and such, and that's where we think we can meet all those criteria. It's hard to see, there's a red line that goes through that pink line. That's an existing ATV snowmobile trail. We're going to have to move that. We've already been in discussions with the groups that run that and manage that. And there's a yellow line that goes along Hutchinson's Road and along Success Pond Road that we would build a new trail there, as well as, you know where the snow dumping area is, to improve that area so it can handle the snow, as well as be a good place to drop off trailers for the ATVs and the snowmobiles, so improve that facility as well. Thank you. So, the components of the project. Both the remediation project and the soil disposal facility will happen simultaneously. They have to work that way. So for the remediation project, again, we're going to have to bring in soil to regrade and repair the cap to make it work better. And that'll also help us improve stormwater, and then we have to look at the leachate management system and re-engineer that whole component. The soil disposal facility is going to be designed under the landfill rules, so likely a double geomembrane liner system, leachate collection system, and a geosynthetic cap to meet all the rules. Because of the type of material we're putting in here, the amount of leachate that should be generated should be really small. Unlike regular waste, which would, accept a lot of liquid or come in wet, this type of facility we're expecting to be less of a leachate generation. We're looking at a site life of 5 to 10 years over about 30-acre area. That purple thing was about 35 acres. And it's going to hold, we're estimating about 3 million cubic yards or 5 million tons. And based on the projections of our client, they're thinking about 65 trucks per day coming in to deliver material. And there's a $2 per ton tipping fee that goes along with that. That tipping fee goes straight to the city. The truck route it would take is the truck route that trucks take to Burgess Mill and to Mount Carberry. So it's a defined route, and the facility is anticipated to be open from 7 to 4 Monday through Friday. So some other components, whatever leachate we do generate is going to be collected. We have that liner system, and it will be discharged to the city wastewater treatment plant, so you'll have to go through a permitting process with them. If there is PFAS in that leachate, then it would have to be treated. We don't know that yet, so that's part of the design stuff we have to do. But we are going to meet all local, federal, and state regulations for discharging of that wastewater. The soil disposal facility will have its own groundwater monitoring permit and plan for that. I mentioned about relocating the trails, improving the parking areas, and whatever easements that are there now would be maintained as well. So lots of steps to go through. We're really early in the process in getting input from stakeholders. One of the reasons for this meeting. A lot of information on the site we have to get. We have to understand the survey, the bounds of the property better, the topography, so we can understand where wetlands are, how the drainage on the site works. We have to do a full hydrogeologic and geotechnical investigation of the site for our design. We need to understand how the existing site features work, how stormwater is managed, how leachate's managed, so we can make sure those improvements are done correctly. And we also want to understand how the site was used in the past, because when we start designing, we don't know what we don't know yet, so we need to go back in history to see what may have happened out there that might affect our design as we start uncovering things. So said it was 2 projects, so we'll get a little more specific. On the remediation project, we're anticipate preparing what's called a remedial action plan. You heard DES talk about what the problems are, so we know what the problems are, so we have a presumed remedy of repairing the cap, and things I've already said probably 4 times tonight. Repair the cap, re-engineer the leachate management system, better control stormwater, and reestablish the groundwater monitoring system. So that will all be captured. We might have to do a little bit more work because we might find, like I said, things that we don't know yet as we go through our studies. And then prepare this remedial action plan report, which will summarize all this data and then provide a design and construction information to remediate the existing landfill areas. Project number 2, happening at the same time, is the design and permitting for the soil disposal facility. So there's a whole city site plan review that we'll have to go through. We're going to have to, like I said, work with the wastewater treatment plant and making sure we can discharge our leachate to them. We're going to work with the air division. We're going to work with the waste division and the water division for their different permits. There are wetlands on site. We are disturbing a large area of ground, so we have to go through AOT or alteration of terrain. We got to work with Jamie's group and Mary's group on the groundwater and the solid waste permitting. We'll also have to work through some other departments in the state because of, we're gonna make sure we need to identify if any endangered and threatened species, and if there are identified mitigation plans for dealing with those species. So what's next? We plan on doing both the RAP, the remedial action plan, and the soil disposal facility work in parallel. So continued meetings with the city and local stakeholders. We're going to start meeting with DES to understand all the permitting requirements we have to have, so we can, when we do submit permits, and there's going to be many permit applications in, that we're hitting all the buttons. And some divisions have overlaps with other divisions. We want to make sure we get everything wrapped up at one time and not have to go back and forth, kind of like you asked mom, you asked dad, and you get different answers. We want to go through it all pretty efficiently. There'll be some site investigation work that we want to get going, not only for hydrogeo, but for the land stuff I mentioned before. That all feeds into the engineering, so there will be a number of reports, drawings, calculations, specifications. It's a large document that would be prepared. All that feeds into the various applications. So the idea is that we have one overall design, that we pull out the parts we need to for all the different applications, and then there will be public hearings with either the city or the state that are run. So, to sum all that up, the idea is to leave the site in a better condition than it is now by remediating that facility and also generating some economic benefit to the city. Got to stabilize that existing landfill. I went over that many times already. Next slide, please, Jared. It will create some jobs for the city, but generate revenue from taxes and other fees like the host community fee I mentioned. Going to reduce the amount of leachate coming out of the existing landfill, and the new landfill, the soil disposal facility, will have a fully funded post-closure care fund, which is required by regulations, but the money will actually be there that won't end up being depleted. And that's my presentation. So that's what this goes back to.
Can you talk to the need? What's the rationale behind the project? Is there a shortage of disposal sites for contaminated
That's
soil?
a great question, John. And let me answer it based on what I understand. So, is there a need? There's, I'm going to take this to housing. There's a need for housing in New Hampshire. And housing projects disturb ground. Those grounds could be contaminated, and that soil needs to go somewhere. So instead of taking the soil to places like Carberry or Turnkey or other spots in the state and using up available capacity for just dirty dirt, we could take it to another facility, generate revenue for a community that is pretty innocuous compared to other landfill sites, and make those other sites last longer so we don't have to build other landfills as soon. So that's part of the need. There's also needs for construction projects locally and elsewhere that getting rid of soil is going to be really expensive, and we can provide an opportunity for that material to go someplace more economic. That'll help the economics of the region.
How much will come in from out of state?
Don't know.
Yeah.
You know if,
What's the rationale to put it in the middle of a residential area?
it's going in the middle of a property that's not residential.
You're surrounded by residential.
Yes, that's where the
You
site is
got
located.
Dara Street, Kent Street, Napier Village, Lancaster.
So one of the rationales.
Is it gonna make up the difference for our depressed
Well,
property
let me answer one
What
question at a
about
time. Let me
property
answer one question at a
values?
time. So the reason it's being put there is that site has a problem, and there's an opportunity to do something on that site to benefit the city. There's residents
It's not
around
gonna
it.
benefit me, it'll just depreciate my property.
I can't talk to, I'm not a real estate person, I can't talk to appreciation or depreciation. That's not my job.
I have the dump on one side, the biomass on the other, and now you want to recontaminate what's already contaminated on the other
We
side.
don't want to recontaminate, we want to fix contamination that's out there.
No, how do you
Yes.
call that fixing it? You're fixing the water to recontaminate the air?
I don't understand that
How's
question.
that fixing anything?
We're not recontaminating it,
Oh,
we're trying
yeah,
to.
you are.
Actually,
That's contaminated soil.
what you have there now, that's a problem. We're trying to
Which
fix
is
that
gonna
problem.
cause dust. Where's that dust gonna go? Into the residential
The
neighborhoods.
noise.
You want me to shift a little bit?
So, I mean, as a developer, I think that there's opportunity. So you're a butter,
So
right?
how are you gonna get rid of this dust that has asbestos?
So, yeah, I can talk.
If you want to take, and then I want to speak to your property value, because I think
You
that's
should
an
introduce
important
yourself.
Yeah, how you doing? Jared Everton, I'm with WL French Excavating. I'm Jared Everton, I'm with WL French Excavating. I'm the Director of Environmental Services there. We handle asbestos every day. DES has strict regulations on how the asbestos is handled. When it leaves a job site, it's actually put into a dump trailer that has two 10 mil poly liners custom fitted to the dump trailer liner. They wrap the soil and they seal the soil. When it comes to the land, so nothing can blow out on the way, then the trailer itself is tarped over. When it comes to the landfill, it's dumped out. At the end of the day, it needs to have a clean cover soil put on it at the end of the day.
How do you dump it out without causing dust?
Because it's in a double bag that's sealed, so dust doesn't come out of it.
How long do those bags last
Well,
before
so,
they deteriorate and stuff?
it's probably a 50-year or so lifespan on the bag, but on
No one knows for sure.
But on top of that, there's gonna be clean soil going over the top of that to protect the dust from coming out. And then on top of that, there'll be the actual cap system that goes on, which is a 40 mil liner.
So if you have stuff that's deteriorating,
And-
eventually the leachate gives out, we're in trouble.
No, there'll be double liner system that's collecting the leachate.
Up Glen Avenue,
Say that again?
did you drive into Berlin?
Yes, I've been,
You came up Glen Avenue,
I came through Main Street. I've been all over Berlin.
the Cleveland Bridge?
Yes.
You see the condition of the streets?
Yep,
Do you think we can handle more trucks coming through?
Yep, so-
Hudson Street currently is one of the best streets to travel on, and people walk that area all the time, and you're talking about adding more trucks.
so each of these trucks that comes in will be generating revenue for the city, about
And the city
$65
doesn't
per
bring
truck
shit with
that
that
comes in.
revenue, but spend it on school funding.
Right. We can't tell them what to do with the funding, we're just
Right.
generating it for them.
I say keep it Massachusetts,
It's not just gonna be Massachusetts soils.
mostly.
No, it's gonna be New Hampshire as well, there's gonna be a
You're
significant
not
amount
gonna
of.
spend millions of dollars to travel 4 hours to dump up here.
Sir, let's maintain decorum during this, we can all speak one at a time, that's the way we can express and get our feelings out.
You're not
Let's
talking your backyard, that's why.
I live here, and
Is it your backyard?
No, it's not, but I understand there are emotions, but if we're gonna get anywhere, we need to remove the emotions and have an engaged conversation. So let them finish and then you can re-engage back. That's all I'm asking for. I'm glad you're here, I'm glad you're asking these questions, but let's maintain decorum, please. Yep, and part of the siting criteria is that it needs to be 1,000 foot away from any residence, so I just wanna make that clear.
Well, the wind won't take it.
There'll be dust control measures.
Yeah, right.
It's not a thousand people.
What road are you gonna use? What's there already to go up to Mount Carberry?
No, we're gonna come in right behind Chapman's facility there.
Which is there?
I can show it. So Chapman's facility is right here, the bus parking station's right here. So about halfway down, this is the entrance to Mount Carberry here. This is Success Pond Road over here. We're talking about somewhere right in the middle. There's kind of an existing.
By the bus garages, by
Yeah.
Chapman, the bus
Yes,
garage.
yes, ma'am. Yep. And why, right? Because I think it's important to understand why do we choose the middle? Well, we don't want to interfere with what's currently happening at Mount Carver. So they already have a station here where they're checking trucks in. They have a good operation. We don't want
leachate seeps. I think Eric went through some of the seeps. You can point those out if you want to go back on some of the slides. There's probably about 50 leachate seeps or so, depressions in the landfill. And that leachate is actually going down and getting into the Androscoggin, so this is going to minimize that. It is.
So what exactly is it?
Sorry, I'm having a hard time hearing you.
What exactly going into the river are you concerned about?
Leachate, if you want to go back up this way.
Yeah. What's in that leachate?
Jamie can talk about groundwater quality.
So on this slide right here, all of these purple dots on here are either leachate seeps or depressions in the landfill.
Right, but what's in the leachate? What is it? What is it?
Jamie, do you want to speak on this? Sorry. We'll let the speak on that.
So the data that we have here, there's two components of the leachate management out here. There's a portion of which that goes collected through the pond that Mary discussed, as well as some other drainage components that is plumbed into the wastewater treatment plant as we speak today. The other portions that are shown in these areas that run off and end up in the stormwater and the swales and run in the catch basins and go wherever those catch basins go. They're not necessarily hung up in the system itself. So as far as the compounds and things that might be in it, leachate is a somewhat messy soup of compounds and chemicals. Now, it has iron, manganese, probably has heavy metals, it has PFAS in it, things like that. The wastewater treatment plant has to deal with these things as they process them through. There is data that shows that there are groundwater impacts. They're mild, maybe, in comparison to what they could be, but we know that there are some things associated with it that are not good. PFAS is at concentrations here that are over the ambient groundwater quality standard. So if there was someone who was drinking water there, it would be an issue for them. There is not anyone that is there. So it is against our standard and rule. However, it's just a matter of the risk just doesn't have to be present there today. So that is one component of it. The other piece of this is the leachate management system, as Mary talked about in regards to the capping material, as well as the groundwater and maybe the sub-component of things, the semi kind of below standard lining, if you will, does allow that to get into the groundwater. That's why there are impacts that are seen. So those are the couple of the pieces that we. Well, I'm not. Mild is in comparison to what it could be, but no, it's never ideal.
Compared to what is going to go on here to address that so-called problem, it seems like the problem that we're creating might be more impactful.
Well, the issue that DES sees today is the fact there is no maintenance or ongoing monitoring of the facility.
We're happy that somebody's going to come in and manage that.
I'm not going to comment on that, obviously. So there are other questions.
The leachate that's currently going into the river.
Say that again?
How are you going to mitigate the leachate that is currently going into the river?
So by repairing the cap on it, we're reducing the amount of water that's infiltrating through the cap and into the existing waste there, and that's what actually comes out the landfill and turns into leachate. That's how leachate is produced. Surface water that penetrates the landfill cap goes into the chemicals that are buried underground and then migrates out of the landfill, turns into leachate. This gentleman right here has been holding it for a
Yes,
while.
your first 30-acre site that you're gonna start with, how long is it gonna take before that 30-acre site is full?
So we're expecting a 5 to 10 year lifetime of this landfill.
Okay, how many footage is that gonna height, is that gonna add to that?
Yeah, so we're still in the conceptual process of this, and that hasn't been determined yet.
Because I'm concerned with it becoming a mountain right there.
Me too.
Okay, we'll take that into consideration.
Kind of a timeline are you looking to start this and complete the project?
And as soon as the approvals are in place, what we expect the approval process will at least take through 2025.
And then once you start the project, how long is that going to?
So yeah, then it'd be a 5 to 10 year lifetime.
I'm talking about for the repairs of the other caps.
It's hard to say, but probably we would start go on concurrently with the other project, so basically right away,
So you're looking about a year out.
if we get approval, yes.
When it's a working landfill, is there an odor that comes from it?
So the materials that we're gonna be taking in are not odor producing materials. There'll be no, we have a list of materials, can you go back to that slide? Yeah, so they're not odor generating materials. We had sludge on the list originally. We had, some feedback from various members of the community. We took that off of it. We're not looking to take in materials that will generate odors.
And you mentioned that when it's brought in, it's covered immediately?
So the
What's
asbestos.
the timeline for that as it's a
Yep,
working
asbestos
landfill? How does that
materials were
work?
covered immediately. All the waste that's brought in will be covered at the end of the day.
So on a weekend that's closed, everything's covered?
Everything's covered.
And the noise,
I mean,
all the
it's,
trucks, the digging up all these sludge.
You're in your neighborhood, you want
it'll be a minimum of 1,000
it
foot.
to be quiet.
Yeah, it'll be a minimum of 1,000 foot from any residences.
We're gonna hear that all day long.
Can you go back to the photo with the soil site in Massachusetts? please? So that looks like a pretty barren area, and asbestos and dust and stuff is going to become airborne. And what type of measures are going to be taken to measure around the perimeter of that so it's not in our neighborhoods with dust doubles? And I come from the trucking world. The truck's dumping. I'm glad you're protecting the truck and, the contents as it's going down the highway, but it's not gonna be covered as it's getting dumped, and it's gonna generate dust, and I just, wondering what your plans are for
Yeah,
that.
so in compliance with DES regulations, anytime we're dumping asbestos out there, there'll be air monitoring that's going on. There'll be air monitoring stations installed throughout the site, and that'll detect any airborne dust.
Is there a cancer center in your proposal to kind of, look forward to putting in an oncology center or something in our area? Because that's what's gonna happen.
No, it won't.
It is.
This type of waste is,
That's bullshit.
goes into landfills throughout the state already. It's going in, there's already asbestos on site. I believe they take it at Mount Carberry as well.
I got a question. You guys are saying that, you're not worried about going in there, like the asbestos and all that other stuff that's gonna be coming in. I'm just wondering if you guys would be interested in doing like a cul-de-sac with houses around that thing, and you guys move into it?
Yeah, first watch it.
And the other thing that I'm wondering is how come Berlin just got so lucky to have it?
Well, this is an existing landfill that needs some repairs, so that's why we chose this site.
So just repair it. Why do you have to?
Because we need to fund the remedial operation out there, so that's where the revenue is gonna come from.
Taxes are going up, so that could.
Yeah, and this project's gonna generate $10 million for the city, and that, hopefully your taxes don't go up anymore.
What if they go to the landfill, it's so noisy now?
$10 million throughout
city
the
gonna
life
answer
of the
that?
project. We're looking at about $1 million per
The
year.
noise level is so loud that you hear it all around the neighborhoods. And we go to the city and we want our taxes brought down, how are they gonna address that?
I mean, I think, I've been a New Hampshire resident my whole life. And I think you bring up a valid point. Why in my backyard, right? That's always the question.
Yeah,
So-
especially when it comes from Massachusetts.
But you haven't provided a rationale, really.
And I think, pardon me?
You haven't provided a rationale for this soil monofill. I mean, you're talking about a housing boom that hasn't happened. We don't know if it will happen in New Hampshire. So isn't it true that this was actually born a year and a half ago out of the PFAS-busting project that former DES Assistant Commissioner Mark Sanborn was pitching and working on in meetings with Director Wimsatt for at least a year and a half with the
John, I think
dewatered
we understand,
sludge
John, we
coming
understand
to
what you're
Berlin.
trying- this isn't a stage for you.
I'm not looking for a
We have residents
stage.
here that really want it.
These folks
And
have
I
been
think we
kept in the
wanna give
dark
you
for a
answer,
year and a
right?
half.
So
Let's have a vote.
let's
Let's have a vote on it.
we're not here to have a vote. We're here to talk, right?
Why don't
Doesn't
we
get
have
into
one?
what you're gonna do and if you give two shits about us.
That's I don't
You're
think
gonna
that's
do it anyway.
no.
These folks don't know about the year and a half of meetings you've been having at DES. I've seen the documentation. This is linked to a larger regional PFAS busting scheme. This is where this was born,
Why
correct?
already
Mike said in the paper he was for it.
Listen, the PFAS issue, I'll answer your PFAS issue. Bait, I'll take your bait. PFAS has nothing to do with this project whatsoever.
Was this born out of that, though?
No.
I've got the documentation. Director Wimsatt, you did not have meetings with Mark Sanborn and these guys, with Revive, over the past year and a half to talk about possibly a PFAS-busting project in Franklin, and then soil coming up to here?
John, we're trying to have a conversation over here.
I think you're right to ask that question.
Can we stick to?
If I was a resident.
This is relevant to the city of Berlin and these people.
Some of the residents are frustrated and they feel like you're monopolizing on their.
Well, why?
Yeah, you had
Give me my space, please.
And I think
All right, I wasn't.
Walk away. Walk away.
I'm back. My hands are here, sir.
understood. Am I able to make a statement?
That would be
Some of that asbestos
and I appreciate
is
it.
gonna drift in.
Thank you very
On a
much.
windy day, you can't stop it when it's windy.
I just want to frame that a little bit. So the asbestos comes out. It's essentially in a double bag, right? And it's going into another larger double bag. So to answer your question, the asbestos isn't going to be blowing everywhere, and DES is going to regulate it anyways with air modeling. We have to comply.
It's a very small component of this whole
Now-
project. The asbestos is-
Just like they've been regulating the NCS landfill in Bethlehem.
Why Berlin? You asked why Berlin, right? Why Berlin? Why here? And when we looked at this site, we said, there's an existing problem.
New Hampshire's dumb.
You're not.
You are.
I mean, it got bad. You have an existing problem, and we think that we bring a solution that helps make your property value more by handling an existing contaminated.
So there's other questions we should go through.
Sure.
And streets that flood at the end.
You know, the streets that flood
over each other and no one's here. So why don't we all agree we want to have a conversation? So let's please, in an orderly way, let people be called on. The questioners, please speak up a little bit so people can hear the question. And you guys, honestly, need to speak up a little. It's hard to hear back here. So let's do this in an orderly way.
in the back.
Me?
Yes.
If your site is 105 acres, why are you buying 300 or 400 acres for this? Are you planning on expanding all of that?
No, and the reason why we're buying 400 acres is because that's what's for sale. We don't have a choice, right? We're not gonna subdivide and take a portion of it. That's what's for sale. The current owners abandoned the property. It took us 6 months to find the current owners. I'm sure you guys have had a hard time because there's no taxes coming in, there are back taxes. It took us 6 months, and that's what's for sale. So we're willing to be a part of that 400 acres. Next question. Yes.
Me or him?
You. Sorry.
My question is basically for the city manager and planner. Will this go to a vote for the city before there's a yes or a no? Is it just gonna be the planning board saying yes or no, or will it go to a citywide referendum where, so you would have to ask the city council that question, but the normal process is a site plan with the planning board, yes.
Yes, sir. Right here. Yeah, there you go.
A lot of you may know me. I don't. Can you hear me? No. Okay. A lot of you probably know me. Probably some of you don't. I used to be the environmental director up here at the mill, and I was heavily involved in the original permit. Well, original, 1980, and all of the other permits that were listed off for that particular site, as well as Mount Carberry, etc. I've been involved in. I've been standing up here just like these people are on more sites than I care to count. So I have a list of questions, some of which I've crossed off because I've already answered them, that I would like to go through for a second here. And then I'm going to give the mic back to them to carry on from there. These are not questions that I want answers on tonight. These are questions that have to be answered, in my opinion, before any of these permits can be issued. Starting with that, one of the toughest things that they've alluded to but haven't really talked about, and bears with what everybody out here has been talking about, is they have to demonstrate the need for the landfill toughest part is public benefit. If they can't demonstrate public benefit, that permit is dead. Public benefit can be 1,000 different things. It does not include dollars in their pocket. That is not public benefit. This is trying to get something for more than just the developers. It's one of the toughest things. I know, I've been through it several times, and each time it was tough to do. Let me go on for my other questions. One of the mistakes that is commonly made when a group like you says there'll be $1 million coming to the town, city in this case, per year. Everyone says, wow, that's great. $1 million, our taxes are going to be cut in half. Well, none of this is quite correct. Because first off, while they expect 500,000 tons a year, it could be more, it could be less. They may not like me for this, but what I would propose is that there be a minimum payment to the city each year to be negotiated what it is. And then after that is worked out as $2 a ton, then $2 a ton beyond that. So that the city at least has something coming in that they know about. I also assume that costs of operating the landfill, taxes, everything else, when you look at inflation, it's going up what? 3%, 5% a year? I don't know. Somewhere up in that range. I assume that this $2 a ton would be negotiated up to ramp up as the time goes on. If not, I think it really should be. One of the questions I asked, or would ask, is leachate storage. Now they pointed to some green hashed things on that site over there, map, saying that these were potential storage sites for stormwater. Well, I'm talking about leachate. If there are heavy storms and the Berlin City Treatment Plant can't take the leachate, is there going to be provision built into the design to handle 2, 3, 4 weeks worth of leachate? I mean, we say, okay, that's unreasonable, much too much. But if you back off for a second and look at climate change, the 100-year storms we have used to be 100 years are now 10-year storms or more frequent. They need to have built into the design capacity in case access and everything else is terrible to handle leachate. One of my other questions would be the treatment option. Hauling the leachate, or piping, I'm not sure which, leachate down to the Berlin City Treatment Plant. Is that for the existing landfill and the future landfill, or is that only for the future landfill? Again, I'm not asking for a answer tonight. I just want to make sure that's in the documents. Currently, I would say 100%, I might be wrong on that, of the stormwater runoff goes straight to the river. Okay, it goes into a stormwater pond and some of the brooks just go by, but eventually the river's just, what, 300 yards over there, that's where it's going. Are the channels that exist there now going to be capable of handling all of this runoff in the future? I hope so. I just think it's something that needs to be documented in all the paperwork. And again, going back to my 100-year storms that have come more frequently now, it needs to be documented for the really intense, the 10-inch storm that we might have. Can that channel handle the flow? Up behind me here, they have a drawing with some purple dots on it. They had it up here for a while, which are depressions in the old vials, which are ponding leachate, ponding water, and need to be filled in. My question is, where is the material coming from for that? Is that just dirt being gathered up from some sand pit around here? Or is that some of the waste material that they'd be hauling in? I would like that specified as to exactly what it is. One of the things that I thought, and unfortunately with very poor reasoning, was getting sufficient sufficient bonds to cover landfill, closeout, etc. I strongly recommend that there be a bonding for the capping. If everything goes bankrupt just after the project starts, Dummer Yard Landfill is no better off than it is right today. So I think as part of the permit, there should be a bond created so that even if these outfits go bankrupt, which we hope they don't, the existing Dummer Yard landfills will be capped, closed. There will be money in there for leachate treatment, groundwater monitoring, everything else that they were specifying in their slides that had to be done for groundwater permits. And substantial bonds, I think, should also be created for the closeout of the 10-year landfill. Hopefully, again, they don't go bankrupt. Hopefully, everything works beautifully. But at the very end of that, we want to make certain that at the closure there, that we don't end up with another Dummer Yard landfill problem like we have today. A question that I would ask be considered is the access roads. Now they listed coming up Route 16, etc. Parts of Route 16 are just wonderful. And as we all know, parts of Route 16 are not. What is going to be done to upgrade Route 16 and any other access roads that they're using? It's not just 16, so that they can handle the trucks. Okay, you say there's cars and trucks going over those routes today, and this is true. And 30, 40, I'm not sure how many trucks a day up to Carberry. So another 50, 60, 70, and the 65 I know is a bit of hand waving there. Can we handle that? Can we handle it in all weather? Do we have to have a crew from the city out down on toward Gorham End there, patching that road 24 hours a day? I hope not. It would be really nice if this overall project rebuilt that road. And those are my major comments now. Thank you for letting me speak.
Appreciate it. Great comments. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Thank you. I'm a Berlin resident, and I did a little research, talked to an environmental health expert before coming, and dug up some stuff. And one of his concerns, which leads to my question, is environmentally stable. That's not a permanent condition, as you know, I'm sure, and as I learned, because the cap material, liner material, doesn't have very long useful life. 20 years max, probably less. Anyway, what happens after that? And then 40 years later. So one of my concerns is, all right, we've got a problem now that needs remediation. Non-hazardous is a very nebulous term, as I also learned. Differs depending on what state you're in. Heavy metals are non-hazardous according to the definition for this project, but heavy metals are not non-hazardous depending on their concentration and where they end up. Same with asbestos, same with a lot of other things that will potentially end up in it. So there is a concern that, well, we have a problem now that needs remediation. We need money, we need that remediated. In 20 years, are we going to have more stuff to remediate because of liners and caps that deteriorate, and at some point the funding that you provide isn't there? So that's one of my big concerns.
You want to?
Yeah, I was just saying, the cap that we're gonna install, and it comes with a 100-year warranty on it, they're expected, I believe the lifespan expectancy is 300 years. Yeah. Yep, it's a 40 millimeter.
If you have a liner or a cap and put it out in your backyard and leave it there, yeah, 10 years is pretty good if you don't cover it with anything. But if it's on the bottom of a pile, protected from sunlight, if it's on the top, the cap to the landfill, the cap is not the cap. The cap is a cap system where you have sand to cushion it. It's typical. I know but sand to cushion it. Then you have the plastic cap. Then you have a layer to make sure you get flow across it of any water that goes through the top. Then you have eventually layers and sand, loam, topsoil on top, and planted the grass. It's covered, and you have to inspect it. I'm not sure yearly, every 6 months or whatever, to make sure that the cap, that the soil on top hasn't subsided a little bit, and you've got some plastic exposed. You got to fix it.
Yep. And part of this project too, we'll replenish both bonds for the existing landfill, and we'll have a brand new bond that'll ensure there's O&M going on for the new soil disposal facility as well.
Yes, sir.
I'm just concerned about all of the land you're gonna own on the other side of Success Pond Road. Sure. Everything's going good, you get the landfill running. What kind of, how do we get assurances that you're not asking to expand later on to put more landfill behind homes in other areas? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. The land that's on the opposite side of Success Pond Road does not fall into the site suitability criteria, so the offsets from the residential properties there are within 1,000 foot. Would not be able to site a landfill there. We're not looking to expand this landfill after this.
And it would have to, we're only permitting or potentially permitting what's in purple. So it would have to go through a process.
Yeah, on top of that, a large chunk of that land on that part of Success Pond Road will be put into conservation as well.
And the school bus garage that's there, will you still be able to operate?
Yep. We're gonna work with the city to make sure that you guys have a suitable spot to park the school buses.
Yes, sir.
Got two questions and a comment. Mr. Bolson kind of helped me out with I'm having a tough time getting around the non-hazardous material, non-hazardous dirt, and then you bring it in with big sealed bags and we make sure we dump it so nothing gets out. It kind of flies in the face of non-hazardous. So
we're talking about hazardous waste. Hazardous waste has the EPA, RCRA, a law that defines what hazardous waste is. And, right, so that's how ignitable, corrosive, the toxicity level of that material. So the materials brought on site have to pass the test so that it's not classified as that. And anything can be a hazard, all right? We can have too much oxygen in this room and it would be a hazard, right? But oxygen on its own is not really hazardous. It's just the concentrations we're talking about. So asbestos is, the woman over here made a comment about asbestos is bad. Yes, it's also a naturally occurring product, and if you go to Nashua, it's everywhere in Nashua, as a matter of fact. But the way we're required to handle that material, from where it's taken out of the building, and how it's controlled, how it's transported, and how it's disposed of, if it's disposed of at any facility, there are special rules. There's a whole section of solid waste rules dedicated to asbestos handling, which we would have to follow. So the double bags, the handling, the covering, we will actually know where every bag is because we'll have to have it mapped. So there's words mean things, and when we use the definitions out of context, it gets out of control. So yes, asbestos is bad. I'm not saying it's not, but it has to be handled correctly, and that's what we have to do, and what they do.
the way you're selling it, it's just non-hazardous stuff. You don't have to worry about this. But then you're worrying about it. So that's all I'm gonna say on that. My other question, and this might be more for DES, Berlin's a depressed area, low income, all kinds of other issues. and we've got this site that really is a problem and it needs to be mitigated. Are there state and federal opportunities for like EJ type things, environmental justice, where we can tap into some funds to get this thing fixed? And how do we go about doing that? I mean, we're also kind of piggybacking it on this across the street with the chlor-alkali mess that's there as well. And it just seems like we don't want to be like in Flint, Michigan, where all of a sudden just things are a mess and nobody cares enough to do anything about it. And here's a solution. We'll bring in this place, this new disposal area to the community. When there might be other solutions to that.
Yeah, thanks for the question. Again, Mike Wimsatt from DES. I will tell you that we did look for federal assistance for dealing with the conditions at this site, consistent with the work we did in the Superfund program at the chlor-alkali site. We actually sought to see if we can include the Dummer Yard parcel in that listing, and good and bad. Unfortunately, the hazards it posed didn't rise to the level where EPA was comfortable including that parcel in the Superfund listing. So that's good news, but it's bad news because otherwise, if it had gotten included in that, there would have been federal fund or responsible party funding available to address it. So right now, I'm not aware specifically of any state or federal funding sources that would provide funding to address the issues at this site. But I appreciate the question. We'd certainly be on the lookout for that, you know, if it were available.
It's considered a brownfield site, not a Superfund site, this parcel.
Yes, yes, sir, right.
On your 30-acre site that you said you're gonna bring roughly 500 tons a week, is that correct, to that site?
No, I don't have the.
No, 500,000.
Yeah, 500,000 tons per year.
Per year.
At $2 a ton, that's the $1 million.
But 500 tons on a 30-acre site brings it up 3 inches, according to the math on my phone.
Okay.
A 500,000 ton brings it up 33 feet a year. That pile's gonna be going up 33 feet a year on a 30-acre site.
I'm not sure that's accurate, but we're still in the conceptual design of it.
Check it out.
Yes, sir.
Nobody's saying anything about diesel or gas or contaminated oils. Nobody's talking about that.
As far as what, accepted?
Going into, yeah, being accepted into the site.
Yeah, I mean, there might be some soil that's accepted with, you know, amounts of diesel and gasoline contamination, but, you know, it's all contained within the double liner system. And anything that comes out of that would be collected in the leachate collection system.
So coming back, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Coming back to the contained trucks and the contained soil and all, are you saying that there's gonna be cubes that are gonna be buried? Or is it gonna be dispersed, spread, and then covered?
Yep, the goal is to get them to come out still within the liner that they're installed in at the site where it's generated. And then the soil gets placed over that at the end of the day.
So we've been talking about contaminated asbestos soil, but does that mean it's also gonna become an asbestos acceptance site for taking siding and all of these other things that are coming off of?
It's still fully undecided, the materials that we're gonna take, but we may end up taking some asbestos building materials, but they would still have to come in the double liners sealed up. There's gonna be no loose asbestos accepted at the site.
And I have one more question. Is that a mayor in the room?
Yes, sir.
I don't see it.
Thanks, sir.
Sorry, I didn't recognize that.
That's all right.
Mr. Danforth had a lot of information, he's got a lot of years of experience. I'm hoping that you take into account the information he gave you today, talking about tipping fees, and maybe he should be part of your planning board process, if that's possible, as a consul, because he does have a lot of years of experience, and I think he's got a good open mind and a lot of intelligence, and I think that should be part of the process.
I actually took
Mr.
down,
Mayor.
I actually took down his number at the very beginning of this meeting, and I plan
But
on
I'm
getting in touch
talking to
with
the city fathers at this point.
No, I think it's a great idea.
He has a lot of experience and respect and is very intelligent. And I think it should be part of the process because this is gonna be pushed down our throats, whether we want it or not. It doesn't matter what anybody says in this room, we're gonna get it. So I think that our city leaders need to be responsible enough to take the experience of that gentleman and think of the future, not think of Berlin, not think of our recent tax increase. My name is Dan Butler. I knew about the property. Nice to meet you.
Pleasure to meet you, sir. And I I agree with you. Wealth of information, and definitely would want him involved if he wants to be.
You've been waiting for a while.
Yeah, I have a handful of questions. My name's Mark. I'm very intimate with this property. I live adjacent to it. I wrote a few notes down because this definitely makes me a bit emotional. I'm curious as to if this is classified as a landfill, is there a cap to a limit to the types of materials that you are going to bring in? You've said that a lot of this is estimated as to what we're pulling in, quantities, material types, but if the classification is a landfill, is this not going to be an extension of Carberry 2.0?
So, I can answer that. It's not affiliated with Carberry, number one. Number two, as part of the permit that DES writes, and what we have to have in our operating plan, and what they have to follow, is a list of acceptable materials. So that will be spelled out, and they're not allowed to take what they're not allowed to take. So the list we put up was what they're thinking of right now. That list is shorter than it was some months ago because of input. There is a public process. Once we get to permitting, we're quite a bit away from that. But there will be defined materials that they're allowed to take. Probably similar to the list we had, but can't guarantee that.
When that happens, because of the classification that's going to be, is there a hard stop that says, no, we will not take this type of material, we will not take that type of material?
Yeah, so part of their operating plan will lay out what they're allowed to take. So if there's, and I don't know the answers to this, but just as a concept from other facilities that I'm at, that we work at, there's an acceptance criteria. So if the material, for example, has some constituent over some concentration, they won't take it because they don't want it, because it's going to impact the leachate quality, because the wastewater treatment plant won't take it. Right? So there's things work back uphill. So they have again, I don't know what the numbers are or what the things are, but there will be acceptance criteria for what can come in. So not just like, it says, non-hazardous soils. What is actually that is to be determined.
Okay. Can I steal a little more time?
Yeah,
just gonna
please.
more questions. Being as knowledgeable about that land, I spend a lot of time recreating out there. I snow machine, I ATV, I hunt, I hike. That purple property, you talked about not being an expansion. That, I can very clearly see where there's leachate coming up out of the ground. It's very obvious. You can see the rainbow colors coming out of the water. That purple property is not an expansion, or it is an expansion, because that doesn't exhibit some of the same qualities as the rest of the property.
So the purple property is going to be where the soil disposal facility will be located. That's the new area.
So that timber would be harvested, mowed over, and would be dumping material there and then capping it. Correct?
Well, almost correct. It's going to be lined, a double geomembrane lined facility, so we're protecting groundwater and soil. So there's a lot of construction that happens before waste goes in there. All 30 acres likely won't be built at one time. That's a big project. They build it in stages. So it would happen over time. It's not an expansion to the existing facility, because the way I understand DES permits this, it's a separate permit. You can only expand an existing permit where it has a separate. So it's one permit for the existing landfills, which is one project to fix that, and a separate project for the soil disposal facility. So they're on the same property, but two different projects.
Where does the cap material come from?
So the cap material for the remediation site?
Well, both projects are correct.
So the capping of the soil disposal facility won't happen until it's at the final grade. So that's sometime out in the future. Not necessarily fully 30 years out, because they'll probably cap as they get to final grades in areas, which I don't know what the grades are yet, because we haven't got that far in design. But the capping soils for the existing might come from excavation on site if they meet the cleanliness standard that needs to be used there, or they're going to come from some other site, and I don't know where that is yet. Again, further in the design.
So we may be reducing previously determined use to other new introduced material.
No. What I said was, if the soil is clean enough to be used, it would be used for capping material.
So the cap material has to be clean. You cannot use contaminated soil to cap the landfill.
So really quick, because the worst thing is when you get to a point and people still have questions and they don't feel like, it's 7:28. We're gonna go to 8 o'clock. So let's manage expectations for everyone. There's a half hour more. So let's keep going. It's a good conversation.
Do you have any more questions, sir?
I think my last one might be, is there a hard stop to this? Is there a certain volume that after we've absorbed this from whatever region it comes from, whether it's New Hampshire, Mass, Vermont, Maine, doesn't matter. Is there a cap to the amount of material that we're gonna take and then we're done with this project? We've been here for 5 years, we've filled up faster than we thought, we're done. Or we just run it for 10 years, or hey, we hit 10 years, we didn't fill that volume, we're gonna keep bringing it in.
So my experience with other sites is there is what we call a design capacity. So the permit is written for that design capacity, and it's also broken down to how much they're allowed to take every year and every average month over a certain time period. So to answer your question, the permit's written for design life, design capacity, and at other facilities that have room to expand, because they only do for what the public need is, we had a comment about that. If the public need needs to be extended, because we all throw stuff away. This is a little bit different project, right? This is just a soil project, not your waste, but you would have to do another permit. You'd have to go back through this whole process one more time to go beyond that design capacity. Right? Good? Yes, sir.
Are there not back taxes owed on our property? I was asking, are there not back taxes owed on that property? And how are you gonna handle that?
So during the purchase and sale agreement, because we're buying the property, the current owner, that would go to pay the back taxes on the land. And I don't know the dollar value off the top of my head, but you know, that's
a
what.
ballpark figure of what the remediation of the Dummer Yard will cost?
No.
I mean, are you
It's
talking
too early to tell
million,
right now. I mean,
10 million?
we got into a purchase and sale agreement around Halloween, and it's been snowing up here since. So we're so early in the process right now. We're just
And I
having.
saw on some of the charts, he talked about a 10-year lifespan or a 5 to 10-year lifespan. If it's 5 years, does that reduce what you're talking about for a tipping fee for the city?
The tipping fee is a per ton cost,
Right.
but the total amount would be
So if
depending
you
on how
do
many years.
5 years, will you do half?
It would be whatever is brought in.
You get 2 million a year instead of 1 million.
So it could be instead of 10 million, they'd be getting 5 million.
No,
It would always, it was kind of just like, as it was explained earlier, right? That if there's construction and it's 60 trucks, we hit that average volume, then that's what you're getting. And then some days it might only be 20 or 10. It kind of goes with construction in the market, right?
Is closing contingent on permitting
Is closing is contingent
on the property?
Yep.
Yes?
Yes, it is.
That's important, folks. They're not closing on the property until they obtain permits.
You mentioned several times the 60 trucks number. This is New England though. We don't do construction all year long. So what volume do you expect in the wintertime versus summertime volume? Are we talking 150 trucks in the summertime?
yeah, I mean, we're not sure of the exact number of trucks. We're gonna do a traffic study before this project gets going, but we're saying 65 trucks average. That's gonna give us the 500,000 tons a year that we're looking at. So it is gonna be less in the winter. You're right there, snowy days. We're not gonna be sending trucks through the notch, you know, if they're coming from the south or depending on where they're coming from, but it's weather, 65 trucks a day is the ballpark. That's what we're estimating.
Based on that amount of trucks coming in, my original question and the question they have over here is noise pollution. Yeah. Nobody's addressed that.
It'll be no different than any other trucks, whether they're going to Precious
The
Mill.
city right
or
now
to-
used to have signs, no Jake breaks allowed in city limits.
Yep, we will not.
And
let
they
them
took
use
those
Jake
down
brakes.
as far as I know. But that needs to go back up if you're gonna have that many trucks.
We'll put those signs up for you.
Because I know last year, at my house, I could hear some drilling going on somewhere around back from where you are. There probably power lines or something like that. That's all I heard all summer. And then once the four-wheelers start, that's all you hear. They're going up Success Road. You hear that all summer long. I don't need to hear the trucks and the bulldozer.
Understood.
with regard to the noise, I also live in that same area. We hear the city trucks dumping snow all winter. Is this going to be a standard tailgate? We're going to hear that tailgate slamming every time there's a load dump?
I mean, the trucks will be dumping it. We'll try to minimize the tailgates, but again, you're going to be 1,000 foot away from any residence. The snow dump area is a lot closer than 1,000 foot. And we're considering putting in some type of a berm that will minimize the sound and visibility.
I have a couple of questions actually. Not to take away from the four-wheelers and the snow machines. I know it's a sensitive subject, but how much studying did you do? It was, we're just gonna move the four-wheelers and the snow machines to this side, but we also have houses over there. Now, you're dealing with, you're catering to the four-wheelers and the snow machines. But if there's another entrance that would make more sense for the people that have to live there 24/7. That's one question. The other one is, has there been any study of I know you want to put your liners, and I have an idea on how those work, but you also have to have piping underneath for the leached water to get to the pollution plant. Has that been a study done on that piping?
Not yet, we're still very early on.
Okay, because the thing is, it probably was installed 100 years ago, when they first started shipping pulp down to Cascade Mill. And I know some of the stuff, I was contracted for 25 years, and I know that we used to put asbestos and stuff right up at Cadbury, and they had a special place where they had to put it into, but we've already got that. How many do you want to make? So, those are my questions.
We wouldn't be able to obtain a permit unless we have those answered, right? And we're not saying, it truly is early in the process for us right now. Yep. Absolutely. Nope. It's not our intention. Yes, sir.
Hi. Just a little clarification on materials accepted. We went kind of fast, but what's sewer grit?
Pardon me?
What is sewer grit?
Sewer
I thought I saw that.
It's clean out from sewer pipes, basically.
Is that something distributed in a sewage treatment plant?
No, it's basically the sand and stuff that settles out from the liquids in the pipes.
So, is that different from, you had another one up there that was catch basin? Same thing?
That's from stormwater systems, the catch basin, but it's similar. It is similar.
This is from sewage?
Sewage grit, correct.
Septic?
Not septic. It's from sewer pipes that the settlement of sand.
Is anything processed on site? Anything that comes in? Okay. Are things processed before they get here? Or are they just, it said next to asbestos, mentioned, didn't say building material maybe? Yeah, something. Now is that, okay, building materials, now is that demolition material?
Asbestos containing building materials such as
Like roofing?
brick and concrete, that typically is what we.
They have some.
But again,
So
it's
total
double.
building demolition?
Yeah, no, we're not taking any C and D debris, construction and demolition debris. That's not what this landfill is going to be. We originally had that on our list. We talked to Mount Carperry. We took it off our list. It's not something.
Capacity is determined purely by tonnage? When you say something has a lifetime?
Yeah, so when we do the calculation, we do it by volume.
Volume.
Yeah, and so then we convert that to a tonnage based on the unit weight. So depending on the material you take in, it has a different unit weight.
Some is heavier than others.
Right.
What about aerial surveys and settlement?
I'm sorry, I'm still dealing with the
No, now that doesn't take into consideration height.
No.
You talk about capacity. So there's no limit on height per se?
There is, logistically. That area can only go so high because we're limited to side slopes and stability. Again, so we're way early in the we're just, the concept, this is where I think we can put it. This is how much we think we can fit into this box. I haven't designed the box yet. There's a lot of work that goes in that I don't have enough information to do that.
One last question. Will you take our sewer cleanings or our, I shouldn't say our catch basin waste from the city of Berlin and develop yet?
Yeah, I think that's something we're definitely planning to work in an agreement. Yep.
I mean, without having to pay.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we can work that in.
I think we want to try people that haven't asked
ask questions, yes.
Hi, good evening. I've been a Berlin resident for about 18 years now. My husband is a born and raised Berliner, and we chose. I really want them to hear my question, sir. Thank you. So I've been a resident in Berlin for about 18 years. My husband is a born and raised Berliner, and we chose to come back to this community to raise our family. And we've raised our son, and it would be nice to see grandchildren here one day. So I'm asking for a very transparent answer from you. If this were your community or your neighborhood or your backyard personally where you live and raise your children, I really just want to know how excited you would feel about this in your neighborhood.
I'll answer.
Any of you.
As a New Hampshire resident, grew up in New Hampshire, if it was in my backyard, where I live, and I see the problem that exists, I would say yes 100%, and I would live right next to it. Yes, because I can see the problem that's there. This brings a solution. It brings revenue in that's going to help the community, and we're regulated to do it by law, right? Permitted a certain way. That's safe. We don't have a choice. So to answer your question, yes, I would live right next to it.
So I appreciate that candid answer that I hope is that I expect is true. So thank you for that. I think it's just hard for me to wrap my head around a dollar amount as the value of our the health of our community and our
Agreed.
and our land, right? Like is our land worth $1 million or $10 million, or do we want to? I'm nervous about the
Sure.
future, right? Our children, our grandchildren, and what happens 50 years, 60 years, 70 years, 100 years down the road.
If I'm sitting in your shoes, Mike Wimsatt came up here and he said, if there was a way the government would come in and fix this problem, that's your best option. Right now, the way we see it, there's not. We think that there's a compromise here. For the community members, this is the best compromise. This solves an existing problem, generates money to fix that problem, and then hopefully at the end of the day gives you back the walking trails that you want. Gives you a better snowmobile trail or ATV trail, right? Maybe at the end of the day, and this is part of the conversation, what do you guys want in this facility at the end? Do you want a park on top? Maybe that's what it is.
I appreciate the conversation.
Sure.
I think it's important for the folks in the front to understand that citizens are, I think we feel like you might perhaps see a poor community that can't turn this down. And I wonder if we can and still thrive and find a way. Thank you.
Understood. Appreciate the comment. Yes, absolutely, ma'am.
So there's some money's been thrown around, but this is really a temporary revenue source, right? Because you said it's going to be a 5-10 year project. So in 5 or 10 years, that income that the city has now grown accustomed to using is gone. Am I correct on that?
But hopefully within that time frame, you fix the problem here. And I think that when we talk about the financial gains, fixing a problem.
That's part of the value of this project, is fixing the existing environmental liability that you guys have with the existing landfill.
And I think it's important, there was a gentleman that was up here that's in charge of the wastewater facility. When you're testing, right, a lot of this leachate is getting into the existing wastewater treatment facility. You guys are taking leachate raw right into your system. And some of it, when it rains, because someone brought up a good point, it's not all getting collected into that leachate system. So the municipal wastewater treatment facility is taking raw leachate.
If I can add to
Hopefully
that.
we can cap it and lower the amount of leachate that's
So,
getting.
excuse me, let me finish. Excuse me, sir, let me finish answering this woman's question. So you're right, it's a temporary revenue source. But the city has an opportunity to figure out how they can invest that money for the long term. So that's a different conversation that the city elected officials can have. Yeah, we're getting this influx of money. How do we want to use it to maybe do some things in town? Or how do we invest it to keep it a viable source for funding other things throughout the future? So there's an opportunity to build another bank account, if you will.
Which could be solar at this project and an ongoing revenue stream permanently for the city.
Quick follow-up. Still paying taxes on the land and the value of the land in addition to the payment? Okay.
And just to tie that bow up a little bit. So the soil disposal facility is going to generate leachate for some time. Probably a little bit, but whatever gets generated, they're gonna have to pay a fee to the wastewater treatment plant to treat. So that payment will still go to that facility for what they're generating. So they'll have to be funding that. So that's still a revenue source that goes in. It's not the tipping fee, but it's still part of the project that doesn't get abandoned. Right. Who hasn't asked the question yet? Yes, sir.
All right. So, we go back to my grandfather, my great-grandfather's time. We don't know what we don't know. I understand that we're under scrutiny, Department of Environmental Services, the best science of today, but it's the best science of today. And we have to deal with the science of the future. And we can't predict that. We don't know. So when they put in the chlor-alkali plant, they did the best with what they knew. Didn't work out so well. Dummer Yard did the best of what they could, pulled the permits, DES. We saw the timeline. They did all the right things. Didn't work out so well. Here we are. So for us to come and hear this again and to say, all right, well, we know what's going to happen in the future. We don't. We don't know what's going to happen to you. We don't know what happen to your business. We don't know what science is going to point out and what the new chemical, the new PFA, whatever, is going to come out, that we didn't have any idea what it was, that it was a problem. And we never thought of it or addressed it in this process. And when my kid has to come back and raise his family, he's dealing with a problem that was never, ever, ever considered because we didn't know. We don't know right now. So for us to open arms and say, yeah, we're willing to roll the dice and hope that it works, the history, and we're supposed to learn from history, does not send a great message. It failed at the chlor-alkali plant, it failed at Dummer Yard, and now in 20 years, here we are playing this game again. That's the first thing. The second thing is I know this area intimately very well as well. I've been all over it. I grew up here. I grew up right next to it. But you're going to make a mountain, and that's going to be visible from all of the other side of town. Highland Park, everywhere else. They're going to be looking across at, it's going to be like Bob the Builder over there for 10 years. Backing up trucks back and forth, dump trucks closing. You can hear that forever. This is going to be the new norm. Everybody on this side of town on that slope is going to live this for 10 years. Not just what you're building to make money, but the remediation part as well. I get it. It's a problem. I understand. I'm a science person. I get it. But we're going to double the problem by having this go on. Now, I live right over there, and we have this pile of wood chips over here, and every time the wind switches, it snows at my house. It snows wood pulp from the air all the time. Clean it off my cars, clean it off my patio. It's gonna snow, and maybe it won't be the contaminant. I appreciate what you're saying, I understand it, but just the dirt that you spread out every day is gonna blow. And when that wind blows in any direction of any of these neighborhoods, they're not gonna be opening their windows. They're gonna be cleaning it off of their cars every single day. And it's not something you want all over your stuff. Look at the ATV trail going through Gorham with the neighbors down there. Can't live with their windows open, right? Berlin City has to clean their cars from the dust blowing all the way across the Androscoggin River. How many feet is that? These people live as close as that, if not closer. This is a problem that I don't think people appreciate what the problems are gonna be because they don't know right now what they don't know. And this is a huge deal. And it's not just a little inconvenience. Like what other carcinogen, what other thing, what other, that we have no idea what it was and never dealt with. This is a big trust issue right now. And I think you're gonna have a hard sell if you really wanted to vote from the people of Berlin. I think anybody that's been here any time has to look at the history. And this is a difficult, difficult situation. I'm not sure if it's worth the risk. I get the crap that's coming out of the place. I get that they stopped maintaining it. I get that it's ugly. But we're also selling ourselves for the future, for something that we don't know. And I think what you're bringing in many cases, could have a far greater issue with its materials than what's there now. It's not good stuff, but I don't think your good stuff is good stuff either. Appreciate the comment.
Very good.
Yes. I have one question. You told me about the 400, was it the 400 acres or whatever, the 300 acres that they were selling?
Yep.
Okay. When this is all said and done, are you folks still owning that property, or is it going back, you're gonna be turned over to the city?
We don't own the landfill, and again, we're open to public input on what this property ultimately the end result actually is. If you guys,
The answer is yes.
We would own it.
Yes, all 400 acres would be continued ownership of the grid.
And I also agree with these two people on my right, and I apologize for talking when you were trying to say something.
Thank you.
That gentleman hasn't spoken yet.
So you're saying 1,000 feet from property line, so I have 18 acres to the left of you on Success Pond Road, right across from the tower. Could I build there if you put this landfill in? Because I want to say I'm within 1,000 feet easily.
Sure. So the state siting requirement is the footprint of a landfill can't be within 500 feet of an abutter property. So that has a residence or zoned residential. So we're further than that in many cases. So it depends what, I don't know how to answer that question because I don't know enough information. So the rules are restricting what the landfill can do. It doesn't restrict what you can do on your property. So if you have a residentially zoned property that you haven't built on yet, right? So
it's Liberty Park.
okay, so our setback criteria is from any property line that has zoned residential with it. So it doesn't have to have an existing residence on it. So if your parcel is zoned residential, then we have to have that 500-foot setback from that. So our permit doesn't control what you put on your property. Your property controls what we put on ours.
Okay.
All right. Did that answer your question? Yeah. Okay. Anybody else hasn't asked the question yet? So we're getting close to the time. So we'll start clockwise. That's okay.
You're trying to crunch some numbers. Assuming the 65 trucks a day was not limiting trucks to weekdays or any particular nice days, but hearing about the possibility that certainly the trucks aren't going to get through, bad weather, there may be some limitations by town boards, no Sundays, maybe not all night. So if we're reducing the potential of those days to something about half of the 365 days times 24 hours, we're looking at maybe every 4 minutes. And you can, recheck that math, but I think that's
To
in the
answer your
ballpark.
question, it's like 7 minutes and 20 seconds in an 8-hour workday, assuming we work 5 days a week, is about the frequency to the landfill, right? So to your point, if we're cutting that in half, yeah, sure, we're probably going to get to every 4 minutes you drive, another truck would drive by the building. But right now, as it stands, if it's sunny Monday through Friday, from when we open at 7 till 3:30, right, you're going to get a truck every 7 minutes. You'll see one drive by approximately, right? Now, maybe 2 are close together and it's 15 minutes, but if everything's perfect, yeah, 7 minutes, you'd see a truck.
And a lot of it's probably coming through up 93 as well as up 16.
Yes,
Is that
16
just
probably.
an unknown at this point?
It is definitely an unknown. I mean, we got to design it first and then understand capacity and all that, what we can take. Yep.
Yes, sir. To speak to this total point, there's a lot of assumed and presumed materials that we're bringing in, and we have a known problem, right? We all know that this is an issue in Berlin, as there's been exploited for a really long time. Is there an anticipated time frame for when this property would become a healthy, viable, sustainable, prolific, property that can become something positive in the future besides just a problem in Berlin?
So I just want to make sure I understand your question first. So the area in yellow, are you asking when this will be viable, or the whole project in general?
That whole general area is a known issue, right?
Yep.
So we could assume that if we did nothing today, in X amount of years, that property would heal itself, and we could then develop that property, we could use it for recreation, we could use it for, it wouldn't be a problem from a public safety and health standpoint. How many years after you guys are doing your work on that site, assuming this all goes
gets seeded, and we agree that you guys want to see trails or something here. You know, solar, housing development. You know, I don't. Yeah, I mean, a housing development would be tough, but let's just stick to trails and solar. You know, let the grass grow in. There'll be a maintenance program.
What can the positive be at the end of this?
Sure.
What's the time frame? What can we expect out of this?
What could you see at the end for an end use?
Sure, a time frame and a possibility.
Yeah, I mean, brainstorming, right? What do you guys want to see? I think is the first question. And what we heard from some of the others was they use.
Not housing, it couldn't be developed, it couldn't be buildings everywhere.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
I just
a dirt bike track.
It can be solar or, you know, hiking trails, dog parks, there's, you know,
Yeah.
You can
numerous
sled,
uses
sled,
out
you
there.
know, you could, I mean, it's a nice hill.
You know, parking for additional ATVs, you know,
So just to kind of put some context on this, there are lots of landfills throughout the country that are old, closed landfills that are used for different types of purposes. Some facilities actually have structures on them. There's other problems with that, health and safety type of extra things, bells and whistles that need to be put on that. There's a lot of sites that are developed as recreational sites. So they have parks and fields and courts and they're really cool facilities. The yellow spots are harder because that's waste that degrades, is going to settle, is not really stable for structures to go on. So the uses for that will be more limited. In the purple area, we're putting soil, we're compacting that. That's going to be a much more stable ground. And we'd have to design this into the CAP system, but you could put a structure on there. There are some facilities that have, for example, pavilions where there are outlooks, so you can get beautiful views of the area. There are some farming that happens on some of these. We'd have to make the cap a different section and thicker so that, you know, animals don't burrow in to the ground. We could do trails. We could do, you mentioned like sledding. There's facilities that have some of those kind of. So we would depending what you want to do, and all the stuff, you know, has a cost to it. You just got to remember. But we can make things more robust to do an activity. It's easier to do that on the purple because it's a more stable material that's going in there than in the yellow. So we'd have to figure out what makes sense where.
So Eric, really quick, because I don't think we're really getting at the heart of your question though. Because we only have 5 minutes. So to the unknown known question, right? No. We can't tell you tonight what this is going to look like in the final. We know right now there's a problem. We are in the conceptual part of this conversation. There is still a lot of work to do in terms of evaluating the site, both the existing contaminated site and what this would look like. We still have a lot of work to be done figuring out what permitting is needed. We still have a lot of work to better understand what is in here. So I appreciate the conversation. It's been a great conversation. But I would argue we do not know the condition of this. There hasn't been really in-depth studies done since 2012 when the last phase 2 site evaluation was done. So there's a lot of information that still needs to be gathered. There's a lot of data that still needs to be collected. And there's a lot of discussion that still needs to happen. So we are here, there's always a challenge, right? You come early to have a conversation so you're not hiding things, but you don't have all the answers when you start the conversation early. So we erred on the side of transparency, of community relations, of having a discussion. And this conversation has been extremely helpful and valuable. Taken a lot of good information, a lot of good perspective, a lot of good ideas, and apparently another project team member. So we're off to a good start tonight. But the thing everyone in here should remember is we are in the conceptual stage of this discussion. So there are going to be many more bites at the apple to better know, have more specifics about both what is there what remediation looks like, and what the actual facility will look like, and a lot of these questions. So just please, as you leave here tonight thinking about the conversation that was had, remember, early part of the process, a lot more data, a lot more investigation, and a lot more work to do.
Does our governor know about this?
We've had conversations with folks in Concord, yes.
Is this
Just to be
supposed
clear,
to
what you're selling us is not a project, you're trying to sell us hope. And we need to have hope that this would actually.
We're trying to have a conversation about a concept. We have a known existing contaminated site.
There has to be hope that this will benefit us.
There's a lot of hope it'll benefit, because right now, there's no person to take care of this problem, and there's no money to take care of this problem.
We're not exacerbating it, that we're benefiting the community, that we're not making a problem worse.
Give us a chance to see what this full proposal is.
I think that's why we're all here.
Yeah, and we're here to get the input and make it part of the planning process.
Will they inspect the trucks?
Hmm?
Will they inspect the stuff before they?
Yeah,
Everything has to be tested.
before it even gets on the truck, it has to be tested.
So it's a lot of stuff, yeah.
All right, we are at 8 o'clock, everyone.
So who decides if you get a permit?
Ultimately, the state for the waste.
not us.
You'll have a vote.
I mean,
We will?
we're here.
We're gonna have a vote?
Yeah, we're
I
there's
take his word at it.
yeah, there's a
I
permitting.
want a vote